Yeah, we're live. It's 9:43 a.m. in the morning, and today we're actually going to talk about my boy Steve Brule, who is unfortunately for all of us in the automotive industry and the performance industry, he's retiring and going to be leaving WESTCH. And it's unfortunate. I there's no other way to put it. That obviously, if you look at the number of people in the industry that he's touched with, all of the people that go to WESTCH, and there are guys that go there that only want Steve to work on his stuff because he's the guy. I mean, if the guy is super knowledgeable, and we laugh about the about some of the things, some of the legends of Steve Brule. I remember the story that I tell. I remember one time him walking by the dyno room, and the motor was sitting there idling, and he's like, he said it's got a bad exhaust rocker on number 4 or 7 or whatever the number that he picked out, and sure enough, it did. I'm like, how do you just? You're not even in here. You weren't even here when we started this motor up and when it was running. You don't even know. And he just walked by. And I don't know if that was a good guess or if it was his Yoda-like mystic knowledge that allowed him to do stuff like that. But he was very good at it. He is notorious for when you run a motor on the dyno and you start it up and you're like, it sounds like it's, you can kind of tell it's not hitting on all of it. One of them is missing or something like that. And he was very, he's notorious for going in and that was his, that's kind of like a go, no go kind of thing. So you could get a temperature gun and go in and put on all the headers and go, oh, yeah, this one doesn't have temperature or whatever. But he's just like, just go down all of them and check them. Nope, that's the one. It just was amazing stuff. And we call him Lightning Lash, because how proficient he is at doing valve adjust, because it's one of the things that you do when you come and do a dyno session with Steve. Especially if you're bringing a race motor or whatever, he's very meticulous about the things he goes through. So to give you an idea, his procedure for when we test nitrous, which we've done a lot there, is he has a whole procedure that he goes through with the bottle heater and the temperature of the bottle and mixing the bottle up and then flowing the fuel flow while you're setting the regulator, because on the dyno, the fuel flow for the nitrous has a separate fuel flow that you're not teeing off of like if you're running a carbureted deal, we have 2 lines coming off the dyno that feed the carburetor, the primary and secondary circuitry on the carburetor. And then there's a third one that comes off just for the nitrous, and the nitrous, they all have their own regulator. And then so you want to set the fuel pressure on the regulator, but if you just set it at a deadheaded setup, it's that fuel pressure won't be the same when you activate the fuel. So he built a flow fixture for this, which is a braided steel line with a cap over the AN fitting at the end, and then you just drilled holes that simulate the amount of fuel flow that you get when you're activating the nitrous. And then so we flow that into the fuel jug and then set the pressure to whatever pressure we want to be happening with that fuel jet size while we're running the nitrous. So it's a really good setup. And then, you start it up and you purge it a couple of times, and then you hook all the electronics up and then run it. And Steve likes to activate the nitrous like later on in the RPM range. Some guys get more aggressive, and I've seen guys activate it like, wow, you load it and you just release the thing so that it will start going through its dyno scale, and then blah, then you just hit it right off the bat. He doesn't do that. He likes to have it be really safe. And you just test and make sure that it's In fact, he would go through a procedure where he would just make sure and not have the nitrous hooked up, just the fuel. Okay, make sure the fuel solenoid is activating. Okay, yeah, it gets rich. That's fine, because you're more concerned about that part of it than the nitrous. And then when you hook the nitrous up, you can hit that and go, yeah, whom, whom, whum. You could feel the thing like get all cranky. And the other thing that does is, in addition to purging the system and getting it so that you get all the good nitrous up to where it's going to activate and get the most bang for your buck, get the most kind of hit with the nitrous flow. And then also we heat the bottle up. WESTCH has a little bottle heater that you put the bottle in, and the water temperature is like 100 degrees or whatever. So you can heat the bottle up all evenly rather than trying to do the silly torch method, which is very unsafe. But this heats it up all together, and then you take the bottle out and you swish all the nitrous around inside there and get the bottle up to the right temperature, get it up to the right pressure. That way you know that you have the right amount of nitrous flow, for what you're trying to achieve. And so the other thing that it does is when you do the test activation with the motor running at 1,000 RPM or 2,000 RPM or whatever, you just give it a little, because it's a momentary switch. So you just hit it just briefly, and the thing goes, wah, and kind of takes off. And you're like, okay, the thing that can tell you is, I remember on one of the instances, one of the magazine guys was there, and he had a fogger setup. So individual fogger setups for each cylinder, which can be a lot. I mean, you depending on the jetting that you have. And I remember Steve asking the guy, hey, look, are you sure that you have the right jets in there? Are you sure that you have, I think they wanted 25 nitrous jets in there. And are you sure that you have that? Because this thing seems like, and so when he did the test hit, the thing's like, bah! And he's like, are you sure? You're 100% sure that you have the right jetting in this? Because if I hit this thing seems like way more jetting than you're telling me that this has. So we should stop and we should check this. No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. and it didn't have 25 jets in it. It had like 50 jets in it or 100 jets in it. And then when they hit it, it just destroyed the motor, because they didn't ever check the jetting, or he didn't check the jetting. The guy that told him that the jetting was correct, that the people that set the nitrous up for him, for the magazine guy, had put in the right jets. Well, they'd put in jets that were way too aggressive, and doing that test that Brule does, you can determine that, and he can, because he's like, yeah, that's way more aggressive. But the guy was insistent that no, just run it. It's right. Okay. It's right. And then it's not right. So the lightning lash thing is him going around and going through the sequence that he goes through to adjust all the jets. And what I was talking about before we got off on a tangent here is when you come in and do dyno testing with Steve, like the guys that build these race motors, there's a procedure that he goes through. You warm the motor up. You go through a break-in cycle, you go through another break-in cycle, you monitor the oil temperature, obviously the air fuel and the timing. You set the air fuel and timing for this thing to sweep between the RPM ranges that you want while you're breaking it in. And then you would set the lash before that. And then after you do the break-in cycle, you go in and recheck the lash. That way you can find out if something's going on. It gives you an indication that, hey, how much did it grow? Did they all grow the same? Is there one that's way off? Okay, then you have to figure out, hey, did I not do that one correctly? Or is something happening with that cam lobe? And this is particularly important for flat tappet cams, which for a while there had a propensity to kind of go bad. So if you're adjusting a solid flat tappet cam and all of a sudden you had adjusted all the lashes at 20 and now one of them is 70, you're like, oh, okay, well, that lobe or that lifter is definitely bad. And so it tells you, hey, look, I need to check other things here. One of the other things that you check is is there sparkles? Is the oil all metal flaky? You can see that when you take the filter off, when you drain the oil. Do we need to look at that before we just completely damage this motor, now that probably the cam has gone bad? Or if you make a pull and then you make another pull and the motor and the power's down, then you go, hey, look, we need to look at something. We need to look at, and this is all the stuff that Brule brings to the table. Hey, we need to look at, usually what happens when that happens is you also see a change in oil pressure because it's starting to eat a bearing. Either it's eating a thrust bearing or a main bearing or a rod bearing, and the bearings are starting to go away. Again, you can check the oil and see, hey, look, this is this is not good. And before you toast everything, because right now it might be something you can still fix. And these are all like cautionary procedures that Steve does to make sure that everything is right. Same thing with running 802 sensors, you know, on a lot of the big block stuff. You're running tunnel rams, you know, you do cool corner jetting, and he's really, really good at all that stuff. And that's why guys want to run. In fact, I don't think anybody else would do some of the things that he does, would run some of the motors, some of the really, really expensive, very high horsepower, very high RPM stuff. You know, particularly he's really a big fan of big blocks. He's done lots of boat racing. Had his boat was a champion, I think, in his boat. And the boat was there at WESTCH for a long time. Built a really good motor. He's obviously a very good engine builder. He's taught lots of guys how to do different things. Obviously taught me a lot, because when I first started there, you know, I'm like everybody else. I didn't. I thought I knew a lot more than I actually did. And that's what happens is you have this when you first start going into things. As you just venture in and start learning things, you think you know a lot more than you do. And what happens is those things start reversing. As you learn more, you think that you know less. And that's what happens with age and experience. But you know, he's been part of the reason why I've done what I've done there for so long, and why I've been moderately successful at doing that, and been able to do the things that I've done. Plus, he's just a good guy. I mean, and we, quite honestly, we didn't always get along the greatest, but that's how brothers are. You know, sometimes you guys fight, and sometimes you don't. But I'm going to go down and see him next week, because I think next week is his last week. And so I'm going to go down and hang out with him. And, you know, it's hard after coming there for 30 years and him being part of that, and to go there, obviously it's going to be different. I mean, there's still lots of good guys there, Eric and Ish and Rick and Troy. And, but you know, you're losing somebody that you've been with for that long. It's kind of a hard deal. I'm working on some videos today also. And anybody that's had any experience with Steve, they'll say the same thing, that if you've brought a motor into WESTCH and you had those guys dyno test it, it's, you know, it's like top notch kind of stuff. So like I said, he's definitely going to be missed. Start a poll. Okay, who's a fan? Let's see. Were you a fan of Engine Masters TV? Brule, obviously, along with Freiberger and Dulcich, were obviously part of what made that so successful. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm honestly surprised he's able to retire. I would think that Cell had become part of him at this point. Yeah, it really is. Yep, Brule is heading out. Yeah, definitely a legend. I kind of knew it was coming. They're getting old. Yeah, I don't think that's why. So many magazines and car shows and racing, and all of his stuff goes even before WESTCH, because he's known the owner of WESTCH for a long time before any of that stuff started. What's up, everybody from Gulf Shores Vacation? You're enjoying your vacation and still coming on the live feed? See, that's dedication. Skullman, what's going on? Cheers, Brule. Got to put your feet up and watch the sunset once in a while. That's right. Definitely gonna miss Steve, a great guy with tons of knowledge and a great sense of humor. Yeah, he's good. We get together, we get some really good Brule stories. Ron Cam guy fit nicely with roadkill wildness on Engine Masters. Richard, you're going to be the new Engine Masters co-host. I don't know that they're going to. I don't think that they're continuing to shoot Engine Masters anymore. I would love to do it. Those shoes would be way too big for me to fill because I can't do what Brule does. I just do something different. Richard, going to start the day off with 2 ads before I see Richard and his crew. Eric gets all the ads, man. See, but you're a soldier, though. You're taking it for the team. Sniper Pro, what's going on? Need ad blocks and desktop browser. They wanted you to pay a subscription to watch. Oh, for Engine Masters. I always love when the smartest person in the room says we should check, and they are ignored. Is that a reference to Steve telling that to Freiberger and Dulcich? Why is it power propulsion due to aliens? So you think it's alien technology? I wish I was as smart as I thought I was 20 years ago. Exactly. Changes, the change, they are coming. All I can say is we need to archive everything Steve has done. He's been a wealth of information. Jason, what's going on? Thank you very much. A quick question. I have an LS2 vet. What are the best LS3 heads and cam going for a supercharger? There isn't the best. If you just tell me what you're trying to get done, like what supercharger are you running, how much power you're trying to make, what kind of fuel are you using, it might be that I don't tell you to use LS3 heads on that. That if you're going to buy heads, that you could use LS2 heads or another kind of cathedral port head that would certainly make power also. But tell me how much kind of power you're making, and you don't put money on it. Just put it down here in the comments and let me know, and we'll kind of steer you in the right direction. Yes. Yeah, Brule is good people. And more than for me, it's much more than the car stuff is like, when you spend 30 years with somebody, it's, yeah, we get together and we talk about stuff that's automotive related, but more often than not for us, it's not that, it's other stuff. I just saw the title and I'm dumbfounded. I've been watching this gentleman for so long. I feel like I grew up watching him. I'm going to miss him as wealth of wisdom. Yeah, he's good stuff. The end of an era. Yeah, he's definitely part of the industry. I'd love to send you my PSI 8.1 or 8.8 to run on the dyno. Not much information out on those. Yeah, I want to get some. I have contact with somebody. I just want to get a set of ported 8.1 heads and put them on the 8.1 that I have, and then run a turbo on it again. John, what's going on? I just saw that you're talking about him, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no, he's definitely good people. He will be missed as a tribute to the ability, kindness, and shared humor. Yeah, you can see that even, Freiberger and Dulcich and Brule, obviously they've been friends a long time, and then when they get together, it's all good stuff. Really enjoyed watching the Nelson video with Steve when they were doing individual cylinder tuning with a tunnel ram. I'll definitely be missing the dyno room. Yep. At the 6.0 versus 6.2 video, do you think that the power gap would have been closer if LS3 heads were using it on the 6-liter? Yeah, the thing that you'll have to think about though is if you take off the LS2 heads and put on the LS3 heads are worth more power. I've run that test on the LY6. But you are losing compression when you do that. So there's a change in compression. Part of what the 6-liter, why it's as good as it is it has higher compression than the 6.2. The LS2 has higher compression than the LS3 does. If you then take the 6-liter and put LS3 heads on it, you're going to lower the compression. So it's going to lose some from there, but the LS3 heads flow more. But if you made them I don't know how you do that unless you mill the heads on the LS2 section. If you made everything the same, then hopefully you would just see the difference between what 0.2 liters does in terms of displacement. Me and my daughter watched Engine Masters 2 summers ago. Morning, Richard. I'm a half full guy. I see no bad days, and now he gets to work with his toys. Yeah, he's been doing a lot of cool stuff with his. He's got into golf carts, so he's been doing lots of different motors and controllers and all kinds of stuff on the golf cart to get the golf cart to go fast, and for how long, and how does it accelerate, and it's really cool stuff. It's cool to see him, you know, because he obviously didn't know about that stuff beforehand, but he got one and then went, like we all do, went down that rabbit hole. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome that you're like, you know, learning something different, because he's a really sharp guy, but he limits himself by not, and maybe he purposely doesn't want to do it, like modular Fords or, you know, overhead cam stuff. And he's like, oh, this is too complicated. I'm like, it's not. You're probably the smartest guy here, and especially if I'm the only one standing in the room with him, I'm like, this is easy. I said, it's just a dot here and a dot here. It's just like the dots that are really close on the small block Chevy or the big block Chevy. I said, they're just farther apart. That's all that it is. It's just the valve opens and closes, and none of that is, you know, none of that's problematic. Have they picked a replacement for him? No, I don't think they're filming Engine Masters anymore. I don't think that they're doing that program anymore. Already been in the pool for a couple of hours. Is it hot there? Is that what's going on? I think a lot of the people enjoyed the show more than the publishing method. Are you talking about because they had to pay for it or something? Richard, have you done any testing on mammo heads? No, I know Tony really well, and he's a good guy. He used to come to WESTCH a lot, and I knew him when he was at Airflow Research. And so I like Tony a lot. Tony's good people. He's one of the guys that when he comes, we give him a hard time. That means that we like him. But I was trying to get together with Tony. Tony and I, when we get on the phone, it's like with other guys, we get on the phone and it's like, you know, an hour has gone by when all of a sudden, but no, I'd love to work with Tony again. And I thought that he had some good, like 205 heads that we kind of wanted to do some with. $680 to 700 horsepower, Jason. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. For 700 horsepower on a supercharged 6-liter or 6.2, that's very, very easy. So you really could get that with even just stock LS3 heads on a 6-liter. If that's what, let me scroll back. Is that what you're putting together? Yeah, an LS2. So if you take and put an LS2 short block with ring gap, factory LS3 heads, an LS3 intake manifold, and then go to Brian Tooley, get a hot rod cam or a red hot cam, and then a centrifugal blower, a Procharger or a Vortec or whatever, a Torque Storm, and you run the blower speed up. 700 horsepower is going to be really, really easy, because you're going to be at, with those heads and that kind of camshaft, you're going to be at low to mid 500s already. So having another 200 or 150 horsepower from the blower is going to be nothing. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm at the DMV with my little brother for his driving test. Tell him good luck. Will an LS1 with a cam and an LS6 intake benefit from 799 heads over a stock LS1 head? Not very much. If you take a look at the test that I did comparing the LS1 head to the 799 heads, you can see what kind of power that we gained, and it's actually not very much going from one of those to the other one. Can I use 202 valves in my Chevy 292? I don't know. I'd have to go down the rabbit hole in the 292 and see what kind of valve upgrades they do when they do the ported heads on those. If you Google Steve Brule, a goofy character that John C. Reilly pops up. That's good. See, he's famous. He's taking the test in a 02 Chevy Z71 Tahoe 5.3 liter. Nice. So sad to see him go. Yeah, Brule's, he's the man. Tony's handling the specs on my LS3 build. Stroker, his newest heads, ported XS manifold. That intake manifold is really good. The guys from Performance Design did a really good job on that LS3 manifold. And Tony knows how to make power. He's good at that. Speaking of which, thank you guys, the guys from Brian Tooley Racing and Airflow Research and Vortec and Scat and Airflow Research, yeah. And they also have a seat company too, Procar, I think, or something like that. What is Steve Dulcich and David Freiberger going to do? They're going to keep doing the million things that they're already doing in addition to Engine Masters. Jason, what's the most that you can get out of it? Well, if you built the motor right and had good enough fuel and had big enough injectors, you could get out of it whatever supercharger you put into it. So the supercharger will dictate how much power you could eventually make. Whatever the supercharger will support, you could make that much. Here's hoping for a long, happy retirement for Steve. Yeah, I think we'll see him do something. I got the manifold because of your testing, John. Yeah, that's a good manifold. It's impressive to see something that did that well. The only other one that I've seen that didn't trade a whole bunch of power was the Edelbrock cross ram, but that's problematic because of two throttle bodies and getting the drive-by-wire stuff to work, and so it is problematic. So 96% were you a fan of Engine Masters TV? So there's actually people that weren't a fan of Engine Masters TV. It looks like one person maybe. Will someone replace Steve Brule? I don't think that's a replacement thing. I don't think they're doing Engine Masters anymore. There's not a need to replace them. There's no more episodes of that. I wouldn't have known if not for you. So you're kind of already the next Brule. Probably a Magnuson. Okay, yeah. If you get a 2650, that's a good size blower, and you could make a lot of power with that. A 2650 will go over 1,000 horsepower if you turn it all the way up and put a good inlet and stuff into it. Eric, you got 4 ads already. I don't know how I can click your name and have it not send ads to Eric. Richard, I like to see an episode where you put Q-jets on weird engines. Put it on a Honda engine or something silly. Quad-jets work good. All of the ones that I've tried have all worked very well. As long as you have the things that you need to, adjust the air-fuel mixture. Thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge to the old and young guys. Oh, I caught I forgot to mention, I caught another snake yesterday. I ran over to my son's soccer tryouts, and I went and because it's surrounded by fields and stuff, and I just had a feeling that I was going to see something today. It was like late in the afternoon, 7 o'clock or 7:30 or something like that, and I started walking around the outskirts. There's a pond over there where there's a bunch of bullfrogs and turtles and stuff. So I went over there, thought I saw a snake. Turned out to be just a rope that somebody had thrown a fish trap in there because apparently there's little fish in there. But I started walking around, and I came around the far side, and there's a gravel road. I'm like, that looks like a snake, and it was a really good size. It's like a 3 or 4 foot gopher snake, a morphed one too. Normally, gopher snakes are like tan with black spots on them. Look a lot. They're mimics for rattlesnakes. That's why they look like that. They'll even coil up and in the S coil and hiss, and they'll even rattle their tail, which they do in leaves to mimic the sound of the rattlesnake. But this was a striped version. So what happens is all of the spots kind of go together and get thin and make a stripe. So I don't see those as often as we see the normal kind of spotted ones. But it was cool. But he he was not too happy about me picking him up, even though when you do this, when you catch snakes like this, one of the things some guys get super excited about, they just want to run up and grab it. If you walk up and you pick them up gently and don't hang them upside down, which they don't like. So if you support them, even though he's hissing and says, he's just saying, hey, look, don't pick me up, don't eat me. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But after a while, if you let them just kind of crawl around in your hand and you support them and they realize, hey, like this thing's obviously not going to eat me, it's all cool. So then they become nice. And so I took it over, and Lisa filmed a little video for me and stuff. So it was very cool. I love going and finding that stuff and that's why I go out and look for all that stuff. It's very, very cool. So I got a good run in, got to watch soccer tryouts and catch a snake. So it's like a win-win-win. I have done a few episodes of Engine Masters. I did the Big Bang when we did the 6 liter on there, and I've when Brule was taking care of some stuff, I've was a guest host, and that was fun. I like Freiberger and Dulcich. They're really sharp guys. They're serious, like car guys. They're not. I mean, they're on shows and stuff, but they're really car guys. So they're the real deal. They go and they do way more hot rodding stuff in a year than I probably have done in my whole life. So they're building stuff and making stuff run and making it happen, which is really cool. So they're the real deal, and they're cool guys to hang out with. They have lots of stories and lots of things that they've done and lots of bad things that have happened. If you guys have seen on a lot of their shows. I bet they didn't like the answers from Engine Masters they wanted. I don't know what that is in reference to. When are you going to get your Fox back on the road? I know I need to. I'm trying to schedule a time now to go back and run the V12 with Brian Tooley. And when I go back there, I'm also going to pick up the Omni. Richard, is the Holley split intake manifold too much for a 4.8 with 243 heads? Plan on going turbo using your videos, but as for NA, would it be too much? It's not a matter of too much. It's do you want to run your 4.8 where that thing is going to make power? On a 4.8 with a cam, I don't know how much camshaft you have in it, but that manifold is a high RPM manifold. Do you want, particularly on a 4.8, do you want your motor to be a high RPM and have you supplied the valve train to allow it to run where that thing is going to want to run? Richard, what do you do with the snakes after you catch them? We just did a video and then I let him go in a safe spot. I took him off of the road, mostly because nobody drives on that road really, other than the government people or whatever that would be going back there, or Fish and Game or whoever. But I just didn't want him to get there are birds of prey and stuff that are around there, so I didn't want him to take a chance on getting him hurt. So I just let him go in the bushes, and he crawled back in and disappeared. Quick transplant 460 for the Comet has turned into a much longer project. Took the valley pan gasket out and then dropped rust down the valley into the motor, and the heads water passages are full. Uh-oh. For daily driver, you can't do a Q-Jet. Yeah, a small block Chevy with the Q-Jet on it is that's a good combination. Take your word for it. Not sure. I want to test to see if I can catch a snake. They're easy to catch. I mean, this one I just walked up and picked him up. He didn't try to get away, which is a lot of times happens. Like I said, he was hissing and wanted to be a little bit bitey, but I didn't let him do that. but like I said, he calmed down immediately. John, so you got corrosion, bolt holes, rusty, pulled the head, 3 pistons need clean badly. Yep. I think I can rev to 7,000 with the Sentra and make more power. The dyno is at 6,800. It was still climbing. Yeah, if the power curve is still climbing, then you can rev it higher. You're also responsible for the Megalodon intake. Yeah, that didn't really make any power though, but it sure took a lot of work. .383 big block Mopar 10-to-1 bullet cam turbo recommendation for 800 horsepower. Well, for a turbo, I would pick an S475 for that, but I would also get rid of the 260 at 50 camshaft, because if you're putting a turbo on it, you would do much better to put a smaller camshaft in it. The turbo will be much more responsive, and you don't need a 260 cam to make 800 horsepower with a 1,000 horsepower turbo. You need a 220 cam or a 225 cam. My GFS 2011 is throwing multiple misfire codes. Put new NGK laser iridium codes is still there. Any particular problem areas need to look for a 2-liter NA motor? I know I was talking to Ben from the car farm, and he said one of the things that he did on his Porsche is he put plugs in it, and they were some kind of platinum multi-tip thing, and he took those out and put in single tip iridium plugs, and it cured his light misfire. I like snakes, but spiders not so much. Yeah, I don't catch spiders. I just caught some kind of bug that was in here. I just capture them in a little glass jar and throw them outside. Tennis TV. This would be for Bonneville Speed Week trial. That's okay. It doesn't matter about whether it's at Bonneville or not. The amount of power that you make is going to be dictated by the turbo sizing that you use and the boost that you run. But you don't need a 260 cam to do that. A 260 cam, 260 at 50 cam would be for an NA motor. You're not trying to maximize the NA power output on a turbo combination. My buddy has a Tarantula. I remember holding those when I was little, when I was in probably junior high or high school. He would allow it to sit on his lap while riding. My friend that had one had a red leg, I think, and I remember if you would blow on it, it would bite whoever's hand it was on. It's kind of mean. It gave me an excuse to take some dove heads I picked up from the machine shop and get them ready to go once I'm re-ringing and putting new bearings in. Need to start a petition to get Richard on Engine Masters. I don't know that they are even going to do Engine Masters anymore, so I don't think that that's a consideration. Will the combustion chamber affect max RPM like unshrouding and smoothing? Will the chamber design? I don't think that that's a consideration for RPM. Yeah, tarantula bites are serious. I remember seeing he put with his tarantula. I think he put an alligator lizard in it, and the tarantula ate the alligator lizard. And alligator lizards are pretty are pretty stout. Engine master. Yeah, I'm not an engine master like those guys. Particularly Brule, who I think is all of those guys. I mean, Dulcich was a Engine Masters, the competition. He was an Engine Masters finalist. He knows how to make power, particularly Dodge stuff. All the more reason to never touch them. Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Spiders are not my jam. It's cool to look at them, but like I think Black Widows are amazing, but it doesn't make me want to hold them. So I caught a rattlesnake the other day too. Went up to my old stomping grounds where Lisa's parents used to live up in the hills, and found a rattlesnake up there. Trying to understand what I did to go from 5,800 to 7,000 for max RPM. My guess is it would be tuning. It's going to want more timing, but it's also, if you have a rising boost curve or a flat boost curve instead of a falling boost curve. I have a short on my channel touching a wild tarantula out in Mojave. Yeah, it would touch the top of them, just not the bitey side. I don't know that I've ever seen a tarantula out in the wild. I remember seeing a pretty big spider when I was down running showroom stock with my Mustang down in El Centro, and that's down in the desert area, down at the southern edge of California. I let it crawl into my hand. Yeah, they're not gonna attack you. I mean, like this tarantula, if you just put your hand down there, it would just kind of crawl up on your hand and kind of walk around. But again, not my jams. I'm sorry, I don't know of Mr. Brule. I'm just learning myself. I'll say that the energy of his education and knowledge must have come my way. Yeah, he's good people, which is the most important thing. And then also the, like I said, the amount of information that he's supplied to the industry and the number of people that he's helped and stuff. It's just good stuff. I'm in North Florida. We get lots of brown recluse. Not good. I actually got bit by one. I actually got bit one time by a pygmy rattler. Did it? A lot of times the rattlesnakes. I think that the estimate is 25% of the time or 30% of the time they're dry strikes, so they don't envenomate because they usually save that for prey and not defense. So they know that they're not going to eat you, obviously. So they don't always inject venom when they bite. And that's the difference between adult rattlesnakes and baby rattlesnakes is baby rattlesnakes can't control that. So every time they bite something, if they bite something, they inject venom. But being baby rattlesnakes, they don't inject very much venom because their venom sac isn't nearly as big because they're not as big. So this myth about getting baby rattlesnakes are deadlier is not true because a bigger rattlesnake can inject more venom, and that's worse for you. Got bit by a recluse, disgusting wound formed after a few days. Yeah, you don't want to get bit by a spider. All right, Blaine, we'll see you. Okay, so on the 4.8 with a split intake manifold, just ordered your Truck Plus cam. This build is in my 85 Capri. Got also go single plane, but love the look of the. I don't know what you mean by thoughts, Tyler, but you don't want to run that camshaft on a 4.8 with a split Holley manifold. You should run a dual plane on it. It would run much better. Lots of recluses in Alabama. Yeah, I see lots and lots of black widows. We have black widows in my garage, and they're everywhere. They're just like they're spiders. I mean, just that's not a thing. I don't really worry too much about getting bit by one. Even with all the things that I go out in the wilderness and lift up and stuff, there's centipedes, and I don't see scorpions too much. I have seen a couple. That's south of Southern California. There's more of that. But lots and lots of spiders, and then obviously, reaching your hand under stuff. You don't want to be doing that especially if we're normally we find lots and lots of rattlesnakes, so you don't want to be doing that. Caught a sand viper, managed to put it in an empty Gatorade bottle with his bare hands. Yeah, I catch rattlesnakes like that. But it's not something you want to do unless you have lots and lots of experience. And I have lots of experience. LS engines have been used in everything from GT to LMP. If you're building one for an LMP or similar prototype, Lister ran one, and they were limited to 6 liters and two 31 millimeter restrictors. Yeah, they ran in the Daytona prototype stuff. They were limited to 5 liters, so everyone built that's when Bryant did all of those 3-inch stroke cranks, so they could run the big bore. They could run a 4-inch bore, but they had to run restrictors in them too. I wouldn't build one for there are professional race engine builders that would build it specifically for that class, because I don't know what the RPM range is. I don't know where they want the average power production. I don't know any of that because I don't have any of that data. It actually bit my fingernail. But you shook your hand and slid his fangs into your finger. That's not good. But that's a natural reaction when and I get that way too. Even when a non-venomous snake strikes, you want to move your hand. But the problem is the snake is usually faster and he bites, and then you pull your hand. And because of the way that the teeth are, because all of those snakes have teeth, they're back facing. And so it tears a big gash in your hand. And it also can hurt the snake too. The corpsman said that if you had been bitten by the snake, you probably would have died. Young snake and no anti-venom in the base at the time. That's the problem. The young snake is not the problem. That's not an issue. The problem is that all you need to do is get medical attention because lots of hospitals, most hospitals now have, especially in areas where snakes are prevalent, have anti-venom, and there are different types of anti-venom depending on what type of snake it is. And if you get medical attention, it's very rare that somebody dies from a snake bite anymore. It's because the people are out in the wilderness somewhere and can't get to attention, can't get to the medical attention. Hearing Steve is leaving is bittersweet. You wish him the best, but hate to see him go. Yeah, it's both of those, even more so than not making Engine Masters. Yeah, a lot of guys were big fans. One of my 3800s is finally coming back together. Heads are finally done. I contacted Jokers for porting like yours. $1,200 for the porting. That seems like a lot. Eric's got, Eric, you need to sign in under another name, and then it won't. Then the ads won't come get you. 97%, 96%. Somebody else said no. Really? Yeah, because we got 165 votes, so the no is not going to be very much. Yeah, Steve understands the dynos really well too. He understands how they work and what it takes to get them to running right. And yeah, for $1,200 to port that blower housing, you could almost buy another blower for that, right? Hiking with a venomous snake bite's not good. No, I would imagine not. That'd be the problem if you're 5 or 10 miles out somewhere, and then you have to hike back in after being bitten to try to go get medical attention. That'd be a problem. Is there any interchangeability between the LS and LTs? Yeah, if you take a look at the videos that I did with the guys from Brian Tooley put LT heads on the LS. They're not exactly interchangeable, but because of the way that they did, it's kind of like the VTEC and non-VTEC stuff on the Honda. You have to change where the head dowels are, but the bore spacing and all of that is the same. The problem with putting the heads on is it's not just a head change. It's everything. It's the head, it's the header is different because the port location is different. The camshaft is completely different. The intake manifold is completely different. The rockers are completely different. So, but all of that stuff will bolt on to the LS block. Engine Masters is not going to be a show anymore. They've stopped doing it. Yeah, you'd have to business building a class, building an engine for a specific class, given you, and you're having to build restrictor plate motors too. So the restrictor plate motor is going to be different than an unrestricted motor, and then all those other things I mentioned also. So it's guys that are doing that, they're building those motors, the professional race engine builders have done a lot of development to make those things competitive. It's not something that you can just throw together. Just picked up a Gen 4 5.3. I was told it had 14 miles on it. Pulled it apart last night. And man, do I believe them. I'm putting it in a drift car and just wondering what the best can you recommend. I don't know anything about drift motors. I don't really understand what their needs are. I don't like the fact that they spend so much time on the rev limiter. I think that that's terrible for a motor, and that's what ultimately I think breaks them. But on a 5.3, I don't know how much power you're trying to make or where you want it to be. Hopefully, Steve handed all of his catalogs of knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, John, you can't do the direct injection on the LS LT hybrid stuff. Small block Ford with LT heads. Yeah, it's the same thing because the bore spacing is similar. But again, there would be no reason to put LT heads on a small block Ford because there's lots of good small block Ford heads, and there's also lots of good LS heads if you wanted to go that way, rather than do a direct injected head that you have to seal up the direct injection because you're not going to run it as a direct injected motor, I don't think. Lots of ECUs these days have more progressive soft rev limiters that are way more gentle on engines. Back in the day, I built tons of Q-jets. It helped having access to salvage yards. What I need some Rochester 2G carburetors. Took a look through your channel and didn't see any information on the MSD LS boxes. Is there any channels you could recommend that cover tuning via the system? But the tuning part of it's really easy with that box, unless you're talking about doing map-based tuning with that. I want to see a Varijet tested. Have you seen Roadworthy Rescues? I don't think I have watched that. Dulcich and Derek put a Stroker Mopar LS top end components in a Coronet. Cool. Is it Derek from Vice Scripts? Didn't C6R and C7R have direct injected LS motors? There's no such thing as a direct injected LS motor. There's only LT motors that were direct injected. And I don't think a C6R was direct injected. The C7 may have had a direct injected. The race motors may have been based off of the LT stuff. I'd have to look that up to see, though. There were these guys that got bit by cobras. I think that they were driving Ferraris and Porsches and Jesus and Corvettes. Wow. I've never met Derek, but I watch his stuff. I think he does good stuff. What are some future projects? Well, I'm going to put the AMR supercharger on and in fact, I'm going to go down next week. And so I'm going to bring the Metro down there and see about getting the blower on there. The blower ski. And I also have some secret ones, top secret projects. Ones that I haven't told anybody about. Because people can't keep secrets. We're live. It's all the way live. C6R is not fitted with a supercharger. Instead, the remaining races this year, Corvette races, will be powered by 6-liter GM small block V8s that are based on the 7-liter LS7. So it doesn't. The C6R, I don't think was an LT based motor. I think it was an LS based motor. The 2V and my T45 manual swap CVPI is tired. Should I build a 2V, 4V, or other? What vehicle is that in? Vicky, man, you've been in a hospital bed for 6 months, dude. That's terrible. Drew, you have Vortec heads? There are cams available for the Vortec heads, the low lift stuff. You might still need to do springs though. All right, Tyler, we'll see you later, man. What's the geo horsepower micro record? That definitely would be a micro record, right? Oh, Crown Vic Police Interceptor. Okay. Yeah, I'm not hip to the Crown Vic lingo. Were you a fan of Engine Masters TV? 95% are saying yes. Winston saying, get the GM ZZ383 cam, and you can run stock springs and Vortex. So if I'm shooting for 6 PSI total, say I get 6 PSI soon after idle, is it better to tune it to rise to 6 after the full, over the full pull, or let it hold 6 all the way through? It will make more average power the more average boost that you have. So if you have it go up immediately and then just carry 6 pounds rather than rise up to a peak of 6 pounds like a centrifugal does, let it do what the turbo does. But you're not going to get it you're not going to get 6 psi after idle. I mean, it'll be some RPM before it would provide enough exhaust energy to spool a turbo up. Richard, what would be the most NA horsepower for a 464 valve? I don't know what you mean. How much power can you make with a 464 valve? Tomorrow's poll should be, who's not working when Tech Talk is live? It's missing the 1%. I know it was, right? Yeah, Eric, I'll be back on later. Scrolling back, scrolling. Are they doing a send-off for Steve? I don't know. Do a big bang of Steve's honor. Steve's probably not a fan of those. He didn't like when we did the Wheel of Death. We were hurting junkyard engines. He's like, this is a good running small block. Why would you want to hurt this? Richard, did you ever see the earlier modular builds from Boss 330 Racing? Al Papito back in the 90s. He had an NA 4 valve, 5.4 powered S95 in the 9s. The name sounds familiar. I need to find some headers for the 4.3 liter V6. So I need to do that now, right now. 4.6 liter 3 valve, or no, not a 3 valve, 4.3 liter V6. And on that note, it is time to go. I will see you guys all tonight. Oh.